All right, and welcome back. This is Raul. This time around, we're going to be doing a little bit of a demonstration of the Doepfer A114 Ring Mod module. And we're going to be showing how you can use it in conjunction with an LFO, modulating your sound sources to kind of increase the possibilities of your ring mod. So to start out with, let's get our oscillators back on the same page, so to speak, by getting our settings back in the same range and the tune back in the same range as well. And then we're going to start by bringing in our melody the way we had before. But first, we're going to bring in a ring mod signal so we have something to start with. Let's start with what we started with in the first demo, and those are sine waves. So I'm going to patch sine wave from oscillator 1 into the X in, and then I'm going to take a sine wave from oscillator 2 and go into the Y in. There we go. And then we're going to go from our XY out into our mixer, and then we should hear some signal. Okay, so there's a little note coming in. So let's start by bringing in our melody. So here we go with our melody. Okay, so that's our basic melody coming in and being ring modulated by feeding one oscillator into X in and then the other oscillator into Y in. Those two are being multiplied and then coming out of XY out into the input of our mixer. And I'm going to detune them just a little bit before I go into the demo of modulation with this unit here. And there we have a nice little ringing kind of sound going on right now. So now we're going to be modulating the pitch of one of these via CV2. So whatever pitch is coming in from the melody, we're going to just throw in an LFO into one of these guys and hear what that sounds like. Let's do all sine. So we're going to keep it pure, so to speak, and do a sine wave, but I'm going to actually bring down the frequency of the sine wave to kind of a crawl, slow build, and I'm going to patch it into, let's say, oscillator 1 into CV2, and we shouldn't hear anything yet, but that's because CV2 is all the way down, and then I'm going to slowly bring this in. And there you have a fairly interesting sound. I wouldn't necessarily call it portamento, though it is kind of slurring up and then slurring back down. But it is a fairly interesting sound, to say the least. And I actually am not even modulating that fast, as you can see here. If I bring up my frequency, it's going to be very pronounced. But I kind of like it a little bit slower because it's a little more subtle. Okay, and then from here I can adjust the range of my oscillator. So that's our basic two sine waves being multiplied together out via XY out to the input. And then we have an LFO modulating the pitch a little bit. So we tried a sine wave, now let's try a triangle wave and see how that affects our signal. Let's actually bring this back up to the center. Fairly interesting sound. Let's try bringing up our frequency a little bit. Okay, adjust my tuning a little bit. So if I wanted to get really crazy, I could, you know, take another wave, take the sine wave for instance, and then feed it into CV2 of my second oscillator, and then bring that up as well. I could bring the frequency up of my LFO. Now at a certain point, you start to hear mostly modulation, and that's where I think it's time to pull back on the frequency a little bit. So it's a little more subtle, because then you lose the melody a little bit almost. I can bring the range up on my oscillator number 1, or I can bring the range up on my oscillator 2. Can adjust the amount of modulation coming in there. Okay, so I'm going to stop modulating for a little bit. Come back to our basic waveforms being ring modded. And I'm going to bring back both to about the center position, because now I'm going to change the waveform. So I'm going to mix a triangle wave with a sine wave. There we go. So now those two waves are being multiplied. Then send out my XY out to my mixer. And now let's start with modulation again. Let's actually start at the bottom because we didn't try the saw wave last time around. Let's take a saw wave and let's go into the CV number 2 over here. I'm going to bring that down a little bit. There we go, patching right in. And now I'm going to bring up CV2. There we go, I'm adjusting my oscillator 1 down an octave, down 1 more octave. Now I could try to go up in my frequency a little bit if I wanted to. And it really is subjective at this point. For me, when the frequency gets a little bit high, it seems to be overpowering the ring mod effect. But when it's a little slower, for me anyway, it sounds a little more subtle. I can bring my CV2 down a little bit. There we go. That's with the oscillator 1 and the -2 position, and second oscillator still in the center position. So let's go up to the +1 position. There we go. And you can hear each time the waveform comes in right there. There you go. So that is with our triangle wave. I'm going to bring up my sine wave, so they're in about the same octave. Okay. So now we've heard those two mixed together. I'm going to unpatch all my waves because we're going to kind of switch it up a little bit. So we did sine waves together, and then we even mixed a sine wave with a triangle wave. But now let's actually go in and we'll try square waves. So I'm going to do square wave over here, and my oscillator going into X in there. And then I'm going to take another square wave and go over here to my YN. There we go. And I am in the high range, but I am a little bit detuned, which is good. To me, that provides a little bit more of a pronounced effect, so you can really hear the ring modulation happening. Now at this point, if I want to sort of adjust the basic ring mod sound, I can adjust the pulse width until I find something that I like. And now I have a few more possibilities that I can take advantage of with this. So I have my LFO over here, and what if I want to send this to both the pitch and modulate that and the pulse width? Well, that's where my multiples comes in. So I'm going to take the basic waveform, sine wave, and I'm going to patch into my multiples. And again, if you're not familiar with the multiples module, what it does is it basically duplicates whatever signal you feed in. Let's see, 3 times. So I'm patching sine wave into here, and there are now identical, for the most part, copies here, here, and here. And then the second half, the last 4, you can actually patch a second signal and duplicate there. So whatever you patch here will then be duplicated there, there, and there. But right now we're patching in sine wave there, and we're duplicating it because I'm going to take that sine wave coming from my LFO, and I'm going to patch it into pulse width CV2 here of my oscillator 1. Maybe they're a little bit too much modulation, or maybe the setting on my pulse width isn't ideal for this patch. Because what I don't want to happen is I don't want it to get lost there at any time. So I may have to kind of tweak it until I get to a position where it's not entirely lost. And there it's sounding pretty good to me. So before we go on to modulate the pitch via CV2, let's actually start changing the range a little bit. Bring them both down to about the center. Okay, we're doing just fine. Now let's take and modulate, or actually just change manually, pulse width of our second oscillator just a little bit to hear how that will sort of subtly change the sound. And at a certain point, of course, right about there you lose pulse width, so therefore you lose the ring modded signal coming out. But there's a comfortable range here that you have where you can adjust your sound and get slightly different timbres depending on what you're after or what you prefer. Okay, so now I'm going to take my sine wave, being duplicated at these ports over here, and I'm going to feed it into CV2. And I actually bring my CV2 to about the halfway mark, and I'm going to patch it in. Okay, fairly interesting sound, although for me anyway, what I kind of like in this type of sound is to bring down my frequency a little bit so it lasts a little bit longer. Okay, so let's check out the possibilities in the lower octave. There we go, -1, -2. Okay, so we tried the sine wave. Let's try a different wave entirely. Let's go up to triangle wave. So no modulation happening right there other than the ring mod. if I want a bit of a more pronounced modulation effect, I can start to bring up my frequency. At a certain point, of course, I lose my melody entirely. I can no longer hear it there. I can hear the rhythm of the melody, but I can't really hear the pitches. So that's in the lower octave, -2. So we bring it back to the center. Very clangorous sound. Let's go up in the higher octaves. +1 on oscillator 1, +2. And now let's get oscillator 2 to meet oscillator 1 up there in the higher octave. Now we can hear our melody coming back in a little bit. So a lot of interesting possibilities with Ring Mod. Now both are in the +2 position. There we go. I can bring my frequency down. Okay. So now that we have that in our ears, I'm going to unpatch these. There we go. Unpatch my pulse width and also my multiple signal. There we go. And then we're back down to just our XY going into our mixer. And that's going to actually wrap up this demo. I think we got a good overview of the modulation possibilities of the Ring Mod. I hope you found this fairly useful. I know my little light is flashing over here, but that can be sort of rectified. So hopefully this last series of videos, the last 3 of Ring Mod, has opened your eyes up to what exactly you can do with this module. Now I know that we only demonstrated one section of this, but the other section is of course identical to this, so you could actually have 2 types of sounds going on for this. So enjoy the possibilities out there. If you have one of these modules, hopefully this shed a little light into your world of modulation, or if you're a beginner, I hope that this is going to give you some insight into what's involved when you're doing something like this, and I hope you enjoyed it. So we'll see you next time. Not sure what type of demo we're doing next time, but I have a few things I'm considering. So keep on patching, and we'll see you soon.